Good evening, everyone. The Wednesday, January 17th Operations and Safety Committee will now come to order. We are convened as of 5:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. I would respectfully ask everyone attending this meeting to please mute yourself unless you are recognized to speak. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Please note that this committee meeting, along with other committee meetings of the RTD Board of Directors, will be held remotely via Zoom and will be audio and video recorded. The meeting recordings, along with the unofficial minutes of the meetings, will be posted as soon as practicable on the board's website. Visit rtd-denver.com, and a live stream of this meeting is also available on RTD's YouTube page. I would now like to call for the roll for committee members. Director Bouquet.
Present.
Director Busick.
Here.
Director Harwick.
Here.
Director Rosenthal.
Present.
Director Ruscia.
Present.
Director Sloan.
Here.
Director Whitmore.
Present.
That is all committee members present. For the sake of the record, I see that we are also joined by Director Tisdale, Director Broom, Director Guzman, Director Catlin, and this is Director Davidson speaking. I am here also. Have I missed any other directors present? Seeing or hearing none, we'll move on to the first item, the next item of our agenda, which is the selection of the chair and vice chair of the Operations and Safety Committee. As board chair, I will facilitate this election, and once both seats are filled, I will turn the meeting over to our new committee chair. Unlike the executive committee election process, which uses secret ballots for the election of board officers, for committee leadership appointments, we will proceed with open nominations, discussion, and vote by the full committee. We will begin with the selection of the chair, and then we'll move on to the vice chair. We will allow up to 3 minutes for those board members who nominate a candidate, those seconding nominations, if any, and any other members who wish to speak regarding a candidate. I will then call for a vote, and the candidate who receives at least 4 votes will be appointed. If only one director is nominated, the committee may proceed by acclamation, and that director will be appointed. If no candidate receives 4 votes, then we will continue to repeat the process as outlined until one candidate receives at least 4 votes. I'll now start us off by asking for nominations for committee chair.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Director Busick, you're recognized.
If I may, I would like to forward for nomination for chair of this committee, Troy Whitmore. Troy, is all of you know, is not only been on the RTD board for a number of years, but has been on this committee for a number of years as well. In fact, last year serving as the vice chair of this committee, I think it would be appropriate for Director Whitmore to step up into this position as chair. He's level-headed, thoughtful, and considerate of all input that he receives. He also, I think, which is another important point, is I know that his schedule, his work schedule is flexible enough that he can take the time that this committee needs in order to meet with members of senior leadership as he develops the agendas for each of the month's meetings. So with that said, Troy Whitmore would be my nominee for the position of chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Busick. With Director Whitmore nominated for chair, are there other seconds for Director Whitmore? None are necessary. Or are there any other nominations for other candidates for the position of chair of this committee?
Second for good measure.
All right, great. Thank you, Director Harwick. I have Director Harwick as the second. Well, seeing only with Director Whitmore as having been nominated for committee chair, I will ask if there is anyone opposed to appointing Director Whitmore to the position of committee chair by acclamation. Are there any no votes? With 0 no votes and 7 yes votes, it is my pleasure to congratulate Director Whitmore for being the committee chair of Operations and Safety. Thank you very much, Committee Chair Whitmore, for your willingness to step up into the position and shepherd this committee. I will now ask for nominations for the committee vice chair. Are there any nominations for committee vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Director Bouquet for vice chair. He's also been on this committee for a number of years, and I've always been really, well, for the year that I've been with him, I've really respected his opinion and his perspective. He is, he's really stepping up this year in his role. And I would make a joke about him being a teacher and having not so much time on his hands, or having too much time on his hands. But my wife's also a teacher, and she might, kind of say some rude things to me about that one. But I think he has plenty of time, and I think he'll be a great asset as the vice chair.
Thank you, Director Hartwick. So hearing Director Bouquet as nominated for vice chair, are there any seconds or further discussion? And also, are there any nominations for another candidate for vice chair of this committee?
Mr. Chair, I would like to second Director Hartwick's nomination. I think Director Bouquet is an excellent addition to the team. In addition to bringing out his teacher voice when needed, he also provides comedic relief when needed as well. And he's just an affable colleague and has clearly demonstrated his commitment to this committee, but also his community and to transit riders. And I would be remiss if I did not note that Director Bouquet also rides the system, which is evident in these meetings.
Wonderful. Thank you, Director Ruscia, for the second of Director Bouquet. Thank you. Are there any other nominations for the position of vice chair for the committee? All right. Not seeing any further, with only Director Bouquet having been nominated as committee vice chair, I will now ask if anyone is opposed to appointing Director Bouquet to the position of committee chair, vice chair by acclamation. Are there any no votes? Well, seeing none, it is my pleasure to congratulate Director Bouquet with 7 yes votes, 0 no votes on being vice chair of the Operations and Safety Committee. And likewise, Director Bouquet, I thank you for your willingness to serve in the role and work alongside Committee Chair Whitmore to shepherd this committee through the year ahead. And with that, now with my election duties complete, it is my pleasure to ask our newly elected Committee Chair Whitmore to please take over for the remainder of the meeting. Thank you, sir. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a pleasure to serve with you, and I look forward to serving with Vice Chair Bouquet and the other colleagues on the committee and all those gathered here with us tonight. It has also been a pleasure to serve with former Chair Kate Williams, and I think I'd be remiss to not mention that we miss her dearly already and wish her the best, and hopefully by chance she may even be watching or listening in this evening. Let us all remember her passion and her compassion as we move forward with the very important work of this committee this year and certainly far beyond. So Godspeed to Kate Williams. Public comment is next on the agenda. I'd like to open public comment to anyone who would like to address the committee regarding any topic listed in the published meeting agenda for the current and immediately preceding month. If you wish to speak and have not already done so, please either raise your virtual hand or press *9 on your phone. Now, during this time, the committee will not offer any direct comments or responses. However, if you'd like to be contacted regarding your public comment, please email the RTD board office at rtd.boardoffice@rtddenver.com. Mr. Kroll, do we have anybody in queue for public comment?
Good evening, Director Whitmore. This is Jack Kroll, Board Office Manager. We do not have anyone who has indicated a desire to speak at this time.
Thank you, sir. And we did receive correspondence from one of our constituent organizations prior to the meeting that was in all of our email boxes. So with that, we can move along to information from external entities. Do we have any external information that needs to be reported upon this fine evening, Mr. Kroll, or members of the committee?
Hello, Director Whitmore, Jack Kroll again, Board Office Manager. There is no planned external entity reports for this meeting.
All right, thank you very much. Next on the agenda is recommended actions, but one public service announcement prior to moving into this item is just recall that there will be a performance committee meeting immediately following this meeting. So we do want to respect those folks and their time. So let's move as promptly but thoroughly as needed through our agenda. Thank you very much. So the first item under recommended items is Group 32 Fixed Route Service Contract for the Board of Directors to authorize the General Manager and CEO or her designee to enter into a contract with Transdev Services, Inc. for the provision of fixed route services as described herein. This contract is for 3 years with 2 one-year options for a total of 5 years at a total not to exceed costs of $155,545,539. Additionally, RTD will reimburse the contractor's direct fuel costs in an amount to be estimated to be $13,085,531 over 5 years. The total 5-year not to exceed cost for services and fuel is $168,631,070. Do I have a motion?
Busick, so moved.
Motion from Busick. Do I have a second?
Sloan, second.
Thank you, Director Sloan. So motion by Busick, second by Sloan. At this time, I'd like to ask Michael Ford, Chief Operations Officer, Fred Worthen, Assistant General Manager of Bus Operations, and Aaron Vallejos, Senior Manager of Contracted Services, to please present the item. Mr. Ford, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Michael Ford, Chief Operations Officer. At this time, I would like to turn over the presentation to Fred Worthen, Assistant General Manager of Bus Operations, and Aaron Vallejo, Senior Manager of Contracted Service and Bus Operations.
Thank you, Mr. Ford and Chair Whitmore. Good evening, honorable board members. Fred Worthen, AGM of Bus Operations. As a bit of background, on July 12, 2023, RTD issued a solicitation for the provision of fixed route services referred to in your board packet as Group 32. Group 32 service package consists of 116 buses operating 20 routes in 13 different counties, cities, or jurisdictions. 2 proposals were received in response to the RFP that were evaluated by an internal team utilizing a value-based scoring system. Based upon the proposed response received, Transdev was deemed by the team to be the most responsive and experienced proposer. RTD has a long-standing partnership and working relationship with Transdev spanning nearly 2 decades in duration. Based upon scoring criteria and direct experience working with Transdev, staff is recommending that the board authorize the general manager and CEO or her designee to enter into a contract with Transdev Services, Inc. for services as described within your board packet. At this time, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, the floor is open for committee questions and certainly members of the board that are not on the committee. Questions regarding this action? Director Ruscia, I see your hand is raised. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So according to this memo, this is for 236,786 revenue hours per year. Can you please address if this is an increase, decrease, or same as the status quo?
So the package is based upon a 1% increase per year to account for deadhead training and maintenance, testing of miles. So it is based upon the current services plus 1% per year.
If I may, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, may I
continue, please?
Okay, thank you. Okay, so and I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I understood. So the 1% increase is for things like training and maintenance. It's not necessarily revenue or service hours, or it is a 1% increase in.
It could be
service.
it could be a combination of any number of things depending upon what the service plan is for the year. There is deadhead that we incur, training, maintenance, and there are service adjustments that occur each year. This is predicated upon a 1% increase per year.
Okay. Mr. Chair, may I ask follow-up questions?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So it again in the memo it says that Transdev would be providing service, and I presume they already currently do since they are a current vendor, to Arvada, Aurora, Brighton, Commerce City, Inglewood, Glendale, Lakewood, Littleton, Thornton, Westminster, Wheat Ridge, City and County of Broomfield, City and County of Denver. And I think this amounts to about 45% of our fixed route bus service. Are of the cities I just listed, actually we'll do it in the reverse. Which of those are served by both Transdev and RTD?
So I'd like to correct that this contract does not represent 45% of our services. We have 4 different operating group contracts. Contracted services as a whole represents about 45%. This is only a percentage of that. With regard to service, there is overlap throughout the jurisdiction of different operating bases and RTD. And there, in some cases, there are even services where both a contractor and directly operated vendor operate on the same route. It is highly dependent upon the operational needs of the agency each year as we evaluate operational efficiency. Our service planning group will make adjustments to how services are delivered and what garage delivers such services.
Okay, and okay, so this is a percent of the 45%. Do you know what percent of our contracted fixed route this contract would amount to? Which I guess in retrospect makes much more sense because we're talking about $148 million, which is a lot of money, but seems small.
I do not know offhand, but I can get that and distribute that to the board.
Okay, would it just be safe to say that this contract impacts, or I guess, I'm sorry, I don't want to ask a leading question. Would this contract impact service positively or negatively, or I should say be part of our service across the region, or just a portion of the region? I'm sorry, of the district of RTD.
As I previously stated, our services are divided by regions themselves. We have 4 directly operating garages and 4 contracted services. Each operates as close to their home base as possible to reduce deadhead and operational cost. But there are times, though, where we have to cross what I would call jurisdictional boundaries or cross into other garages' operating territory for operational efficiency or just due to resource constraints.
Okay, thank you. So, and again, I'm looking at this list. I see like Boulder is not included here. So if I could, I have another question. So Transdev is a current—
Director Arusha,
yes.
I see Madam CEO with her hand raised, so she may be able to help with some of your queries. Deborah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to add some additional comments to what Mr. Fred Worthen outlined. His comments were accurate, but more importantly, I'd be remiss not to state, we have a transportation network that's comprised of 2,342 square miles, keeping in mind that individuals don't solely take a one-seat ride and that there is connectivity throughout the entire region. Hence, when the question was posed, whether or not is it impacting Boulder, there's a possibility it could be because somebody could transfer to a different route. So I wanted to ensure that that was put forward for the full board's understanding relative to the question that was posed. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Continue, Director Arusha.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
I said, go ahead.
Thank you. And I also appreciate our General Manager CEO's comments, how important these contracts are and how, these routes don't operate in a vacuum. So the other question I had is, so it sounds like we have different regions or groups of contracts, and I want to assume, but I guess I'll ask to confirm, does TransDev currently have other contracts with RTD operating in other areas right now? And is this just one of them?
Yes, ma'am. TransDev recently assumed First Transit
Mhm.
and has assumed the contracts that were in operation. So at this point, TransDev is the operator of all 4 of our fixed route contracts.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Now, I asked this in email and I was told it was not permitted to be disclosed. I'll ask again, and if it's and we can just get this on the record. I had asked this memo notes there were 2 bids that were put in, and it doesn't note what the other who the other bidder was. Now, in other contracts, it has been disclosed when other companies put in a bid and they weren't awarded that contract. And I'm just wondering why this is all of a sudden proprietary or confidential information for the board.
Mr. Chair Whitmore, if it is okay with you, I will defer to legal counsel for a response to this question.
That's fine. Ms. Snyder, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Melanie Snyder, General Counsel. And I will note that Dana Steele, our Director of Contracts and Procurements, is available to answer questions as well. But I did confer with the leadership in that group, and that was the direction, just in order to preserve the integrity of the process and avoid any appearance of any kind of bias, or just to maintain a pure process. And I'll defer to Ms. Steele if there's anything she wants to add.
Ms. Steele, the floor is yours if you have any further information.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Director. And Director Ruscia, thank you for the question. I do want, I think there may be some confusion here. We have in the past revealed the names of other bidders, but I don't believe those were necessarily in a sealed, in an evaluative procurement. We provide that information after, but currently we have an active procurement, and the technical proposals and the evaluation committee's work is under what is termed as the cone of silence until that procurement is closed. And usually we try to give about 72 hours after that, just to make sure nothing goes wrong. So right now we want to preserve the integrity. There's nothing that we're trying to do to not disclose this information, but that is our consistent policy, is that we don't, we should not be revealing information about other bidders until we have an active contract in place. I hope that answers the question, but I'm happy to try to answer any follow-ups.
Mr. Chair, is it okay?
Follow up.
Thank you. It answers the question that is the policy. I'm not sure I'm following the rationale. I mean, simply put, the committee or the internal team that reviewed this contract would have also reviewed the competitive bid of the other single bidder, and they would have been privy to this information. This board also has executive privilege. That's something that could have been disclosed under executive privilege if necessary. And just my understanding experience with other governments and procurement, I've just never seen an approval body that kind of information be withheld from the approving body. So maybe it's just unique to RTD. I think we had some of this conversation last year and also during our procurement training, but
Right.
You did answer the question. I not sure I follow completely with the conclusion, but I do appreciate you addressing RTD's policy in that regard.
Director Ruscia, if I may follow up
Oh, yeah.
Please.
and respond. Thank you, Director. I would say I don't believe this is unique to RTD. I think the cone of silence during an active procurement is a best practice and a very common practice among governments. I don't, again, there may be some lack of clarity regarding what type of procurement where we may have disclosed other names in the past, or the timing of that disclosure coming after the actual award of the contract. That's about the only clarification that I can provide. I just don't believe that this is, the cone of silence is not unique to RTD in public procurement.
Thanks. I understand what you're talking about regarding the cone of silence. I think my confusion or maybe slight disagreement is, after the process has been closed, a determination has been made, and I'm going to presume there's already like a letter of intent to award, or, and or a conformed contract is in place. So this would be a little different if we had a live open process in which we were, receiving bids right now, or, if someone on the board had asked for, all of the bids for a comparison or something, because that's not our duty in this stage in the process. Mr. Chair, I do have some other questions. I think they would probably cannibalize this committee's time. So in the interest of time, I would like to make a comment and a statement, but I would prefer to just yield to other directors to make sure that they have their questions asked if they have any.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We will come back to you. I do see a hand raised. It's our legal counsel, Melanie Snyder, so proceed.
Thank you, Chair Whitmore. I just want to make sure that Ms. Still didn't have anything else to respond. I did have, it looked like she might have been trying to say add one more clarification, and then I had one additional clarification to follow. So Dana, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I think my concern is with timing, and if I've already answered the question that Director Ruscia presented, I don't want to go off on a tangent. I do believe the concern is having preserving the integrity of the procurement practice. So, if we were to disclose the identity of the other vendor in this case, there's a chance that there could be, a conflict of interest, or someone on the board potentially having, some type of interest that they either, weren't even aware that they would need to disclose at that point, and it could delay or even somehow taint the procurement process. And that's what we're trying to avoid by not disclosing this other. That's the only reason.
Thank you. And then, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Proceed.
So along the lines of the timing, certainly as soon as a contract is signed, we routinely make information available about the solicitation, including scoring sheets and proposals. And so all of that does become available at that time. So it's not that it's never available, it's just a timing issue. And then also my understanding is that in this particular solicitation that there hasn't been a notice of intent to award, that the procurement team was awaiting this board's direction to move forward. So there is not a signed contract from this vendor.
Thank you, Melody. All right, we will come back to Director Ruscia, but I see Committee Member Busick has his hand up. So, Director Busick, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my comments were in essence echoing what Ms. Snyder has said, that there's no contract till we authorize the general manager to sign it, and then she actually signs it. If this body were to not approve the contract, the procurement would have to start over. So that's why we have this issue of not revealing all of this confidential information. And I can also attest, having been in city government for 8 years, that this is very common in governmental practice. And Director Ruscia, thank you very much for your questions and comments. They're very good. And also thank you for agreeing not to monopolize the conversation. Thanks.
All right, are there other committee members before I call on Director Broom? Director Sloan.
Yes, I need to get out of this meeting and come right back in. My camera is suddenly stopped, and now it says it's being used by another app, and I've closed all my app. So I will be right back. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Director Sloan. Good luck with the IT world. Any other members of the committee before I proceed with Director Broom? All right, Director Broom, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Just out of curiosity, in this case, since there's only one bidder, you know who the low bidder is. Do we normally disclose how many bids we got, who the low bidder was, or if we choose someone other than the low bidder, what the rationale was for that?
Mr. Chair, if I may. So, Director Broom, thank you for the question. This is not a low bid. This is a value-based bid itself. So when we evaluate a value-based bid, the scoring committee will look at a number of different items, such as the understanding and approach that the vendor takes towards the RFP requirements, the experience of the firm and key personnel in providing services that are similar in scope, size, and complexity, the cost, and SBE and DBE goals are all consideration on evaluation criteria.
Okay, thank you very much.
Ms. Steele, did you have anything to add on that matter?
I did. Thank you, Director. If I may,
Please.
I would clarify that this was not a single bid, that there were actually two responsive proposals submitted for this. And just a reminder to the board that the evaluation committee first reviews and scores all of the technical proposals without any view into cost. And then cost is prepared and revealed by the procurement specialist after the technical proposal scores have been submitted. So it is a two-tier process. And in this case, we had two responsive bidders, and and Transdev was selected both on the technical proposal and on the cost proposal as the clear unanimous, I believe, by the committee as the front runner.
Thank you for that clarification, Ms. Steele.
You're welcome.
All right, Director Broom, do you have any follow-up? I see your hand is still in the air.
No, I don't. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I see no other hands except for Director Arusha, so we'll return the floor to you for your comments.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll keep it brief. I won't cannibalize time, although I do think that $148 million is worth at least 20 minutes. So while it's true that, you know, there's always a potential for conflict of interest, this board also has a very strict conflict of interest policy that we follow, we adhere to. In the past, board members have recused themselves, even just over the appearance of a conflict of interest, even when none existed. And I believe we will continue to do so when those questions arise. Yes, this information is subject to the public after contracts are executed, but that's after the fact. That is after the board has authorized $150 million in a contract that, quite frankly, we can't really see. Now, when I was part of the procurement training last year for new and current directors, I was advised that if I had, questions and needed a briefing, even if something fell under executive privilege, that I could do that. I could reach out. So after I received our board agenda, which was dropped, I think, on the Friday before a holiday weekend, with this request, I read it and I did reach out with that request. That request was denied. And I cannot help but to note that we just received an email from Arapahoe County commissioners and elected officials suggesting that perhaps they would receive better service if this board had a different governance structure. And while I don't necessarily think that's true, I think we're doing the best we can with what we have. I do not think this is a good look for this board or to our stakeholders when we get $150 million requests right before a holiday weekend and a very quick turnaround. And when questions are asked, they're not answered. And we are pointed to hundreds of pages of contract documents and told we can ask them in committee. This contract could be perfectly fine It probably is, but without having a process in place in which the board can function as the trustees we are effectively rubber stamping. And so I cannot in good conscience vote on service delivery contracts like this without a little more information and a little bit heads up. Moving forward, I would ask that RTD please, we now have a committee work plan that we're working on. There's a draft in front of everybody. This, we could have had a heads up. I would love to see the staff come to us and say, this is what's upcoming, give a presentation, allow us to get some of these questions out of the way, and then come back to us next month when you have a contract for us to authorize. I think that would be a much more appropriate process. And that actually is reflective of what a lot of other bodies do. I've spoken with county commissioners, folks at the state, and folks on some city councils, and they have said that they are afforded more information and they're afforded a briefing with council when needed before they vote on major things like this. And I think that we should be allowed the same. At the end of the day, we are stewards of taxpayer dollars. This contract might be fine, but whether it's this service delivery contract or a major capital project, we have to ensure that we did do our due diligence. And sometimes that is taken more than 5 or 10 or 20 minutes on something this significant. And then finally, and this is a policy thing, right? Many years ago, the legislature required us to contract out the majority of our services under the guise that it would be cheaper and more efficient. Now, I think that was also union busting at the time. Okay, but we no longer have this requirement. We are allowed to contract up to 58%. We don't have to. And so I would opine that after the legislature removed the mandate and just gave us permission, that every contract moving forward that outsources our services and our workforce is a policy choice. And so I would implore at some point this body have a very serious discussion. Is outsourcing our labor force good for this agency? Does it provide better transit? Does it save us money? And this is not to knock on Transdev or First Transit. It's not. But these are also policy conversations. And so because I was not afforded the respect I think that I should have earned as a director to get that briefing and to get some of this stuff out of the way and have a more robust conversation about this, I'm going to vote no. I would, respectfully ask that, other directors join me in asking for some more disclosure and for us to put on our agenda as a policy-making body a discussion about whether or not contracting out so much of our service really benefits our constituents and our riders. So thank you very much. I will yield the floor, and I appreciate your grace, Mr. Chair.
Problem. I respect all of your comments as well as others. So I saw Ms. Steele with her hand up. Perhaps you had a reply or some input before I call on Director Rosenthal.
If I may, and I don't want to, thank you, Chair. Dana Steele, Director of Contracting and Procurement. I don't want to address policy, and I'm not familiar. I don't know about how the origin of the timing of the production of these documents to the board. But I do want to clarify that it's my understanding that the only information that we haven't provided to you in response to the recent request of Director Ruscia was the identity of the other vendor. And I believe everything else has been provided. And that's the only clarification I wanted to make from my perspective. If that's not Director Ruscia's understanding, I just wanted to tell what was mine.
All right, I appreciate the input. All right, Director Rosenthal, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate some of the questions that are certainly being asked of our management team. I certainly understand. This is a large sum that we're requesting to be provided to a contractor who has served RTD and the community but I'm concerned about some of the, I guess I could say, judgments that are being made about our leadership team. And it comes across as accusatory and almost making them out to be duplicitous and things like that. I mean, I trust our general manager. I trust our legal department and legal counsel and our contracts department. And they had an internal process that we are following that and we will find out, you know, the other bidder in due course. So I just want to make sure that we are in potential, even though I hear you, Mr. Chair, that you believe that everything was respectful. I'm feeling like we're going up to the edge. And I really just think we need to, you know, always look inward and make sure that we are respecting our team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Rosenthal. Appreciate your comments as well. Are there any other questions or discussion matters before we take a vote on this motion? I see none. We have a motion by Director Busick and a second by Director Sloan. I will ask for a roll call vote on this matter. And I happen to actually have the roster in front of me. We're going in alphabetical order if I did it right. So, Director Bouquet, how do you vote?
I'm a no.
I'm sorry, did you say no? Okay.
Yes, I'm a no.
Okay, thank you. It was just a bit garbled. Director Busick.
Yes.
Director Harwick.
No.
Director Rosenthal.
Yes.
Director Ruscia.
You're muted, Joyanne.
Oh, sorry. Respectfully, no.
Thank you. Director Sloan.
Yes.
And Director Whitmore voting yes. So the ayes have it. 1, 2, 3, 4 yes votes, 3 no votes. No votes coming from Directors Bouquet, Harwick, and Ruscia. Mr. Kroll, do I have the results correct?
Director Whitmore, you do indeed. That is what I have as well.
All right. Thank you very much. Sorry about the pause. I'm getting a phone call from Amazon delivery. We all know what kind of priority that has in our lives, so I apologize for that. All right. The second item for new business tonight is a drug and alcohol policy amendments. It's for the Board of Directors to approve the amendments to the RTD drug and alcohol policy mandated by the Federal Transit Administration, the FTA, of the United States Department of Transportation. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Busick second.
All right, thank you. So I have a motion by Director Sloan, a second by Director Busick. At this time, I'd like to ask Charlene Pelleggi, Chief People Officer, and Ed Mimick, Manager HR DOT Compliance, to present this item to the committee. Charlene.
Thank you, Chair Whitmore. Charlene Pelleggi, Chief People Officer. You have before you, the committee has before you a package, quite lengthy one, so I apologize. There's lots to read there, but it's a critical policy to the work of the agency. As noted, I have Ed Mimick, who is our Manager of DOT HR Department of Transportation Compliance. He is here as a subject matter expert, having negotiated the working terms and conditions of this policy that impact our represented members. That negotiation occurred with membership from the ATU 1001 over many months. This policy is coming before the board for review and ultimately approval because in this last iteration there were substantive edits, and they are detailed in your package. And so if there are any specific questions that pertain to the policy, in particular, I will call on Mr. Memick to address those, but I will pause and yield the floor if there are any questions.
All right, pardon the dog because I think the Amazon person has arrived. So is there any questions of Charlene, or do we need to hear from Ed? All right, we do have a motion from Directors Sloan and Busick for this matter. Are there any no votes on this action? Seeing no votes, we will deem the action approved by unanimous vote of 7-0. All right, we have one discussion item on the agenda this evening, and that's the 2024 Operations and Safety Committee Work Plan. As most of you know, we have had conversations about work plans the last evening with both of the other standing committees, and we are going to proceed in the same manner with a work plan effort, and certainly Vice Chair Bouquet and myself will work with our staff on recommendations. So at this point in time, I'd call on Jack Kroll to summarize the work plan and some of the timing efforts, and then we can have some discussion and then ask for input offline as well. So Jack, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Director Whitmore. Jack Kroll, Board Office Executive Manager. I'll just say a few remarks very briefly and then turn the floor over to Chief Operating Officer Ford to say a few words as well. But effectively, as you all heard last night, those of you who attended the Finance and Planning Committee meeting, this work plan was developed based off of information that the Board Office received from staff. That includes the recommended actions and discussions they need you all to have at this stage or throughout the year, I should say. The opportunity you all have before you this evening is to take a look at the work plan as it was shared out and assess whether there are items you all would like to recommend to the committee to address. Following the recommendations and the conversation you all have this evening, you all are free to continue to submit ideas on what should be on this committee's work plan moving forward, and you can certainly send those to either Committee Chair Whitmore, Committee Vice Chair Bouquet, the Board Office, or Michael Ford and other staff. And what will happen once all of those recommendations have come through the door is that Chief Operating Officer Ford will sit down with Director Whitmore and Committee Vice Chair Bouquet and revise the work plan as it's presented to you this evening. And that will come back for your approval as a committee at your subsequent meeting in February. So with that, I don't have anything else to add other than to hand it over to Chief Operating Officer Ford for a few more words.
Thank you, Jack. Michael Ford, Chief Operations Officer. I really don't have much to add. What you have in front of you is a listing of items that we have throughout the year, and we look forward to further discussion with the chair and the vice chair of the committee to determine if there are other things to be added to that. I think that would be all I would have to say at this point, given that you have a list of items that we have put throughout the year that we know at this time. Other things obviously can be added or changed as we go forward in this process. So at this time, I would defer to our CEO and General Manager if she had any other comments to make.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Please proceed.
Yes, thank you very kindly. Thank you, Mr. Ford. Recognizing that the agency's core business is transit service delivery, that's why we are all here, and that is the core business function of this agency. As I shared during comments at last night's Finance and Planning Committee, I believe it is paramount that the committee have discussions relative to a path forward, recognizing policies that need to be established in the course of your board retreat, but more specifically recognizing that some key elements that we're looking to work on a collaborative fashion, this gives us an opportunity to leverage this working plan in determining what those elements may be. relative to some core initiatives as we talk about back to basics, people power, welcoming transit environment. That is all fully encompassed in service delivery as we are a labor-intensive organization. So recognizing the difference between big P and little p, I wanted to put that on the record as we go forward because it's critically important as we talk about retaining employees, having a welcoming transit environment, and ensuring that our assets are in a state of good repair. So oftentimes there's been questions that have been raised and conversations that have ensued. So recognizing there may be great potential for this body to have quarterly updates on some key elements. So you in fact have the information that you need to set forward policy that which my team and I can effectuate. Thank you very kindly for the opportunities to express those comments in this forum.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. So one question that I have, we're on a tight timeline to turn around the next version next month. And I would assume that this could continue to be a working document, at least for a few more months, knowing that we do have a day-long strategic planning effort later in the month of February. Is the thought that we could possibly have these type of amendments? I didn't really hear that last night, but it was an idea that sprung into my head earlier today. Ms. Johnson?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I would concur with that, recognizing that this is a living document, it's your work plan, and we can't foresee everything that lies ahead, but recognizing as we look at key performance indicators, agency performance and goals and metrics of alike, we typically look at those on a quarterly basis. That gives us a better informed decision as we look to leverage leading indicators as opposed to lagging indicators. I think that would be in the interest of all the parties that we could have an opportunity to actually revisit and go forward and do some meaningful work collectively. Thank you.
Alan, thank you very much. All right, I've got 4 directors in queue. Director Sloan, the floor is yours.
Thank you. First, I'd like to state that I think it's an excellent idea to have committee work plans. You know, it's a very positive way to look at our year. And Director Rucha has already mentioned, you know, a topic she would like to look at. I would like to follow up on the idea that our retreat is not scheduled till February 24th. And I'm not sure why we need to do it, you know, review the plan twice. You know, it might be better to defer the plan and have an opportunity to incorporate the ideas from the retreat and look at it for the first time in March. So that's an idea thrown out. I have another comment, and I recognize that, you know, we're going to have an opportunity to talk to the chair and the vice chair about ideas. But I would just like to raise one big one, and that is the transition plan. I don't believe the draft transition plan will be ready in 2024, but a briefing on it would be really helpful soon. So those are my 2 comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Sloan. I think the draft might be available, and I will defer to GM CEO Johnson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. And Director Sloan, I recognize you weren't in attendance at the committee meeting last night, but this topic did arise. And as we look at the facilities fleet and transition plan, there will be updates provided to this body. And we are expecting the facilities fleet and transition plan to be readily available no later than December 15th of this year going forward. Thank you.
Thank you both. All right, Mr. Kroll, I think you're next in queue. Did you have something to add at this moment, please?
Yes, Director Whitmore. I just wanted to respond to a couple of your comment as well as Director Sloan's comment around the timing of approval of these. So in November, I presented to you all a draft bylaw change to enshrine the process of developing these committee work plans in your bylaws. And that bylaw change contemplates that you all would approve these plans no later than March of every year. No gold star for doing it earlier. I think there was some conversation around having a retreat date earlier in the year this year, but for planning purposes, the 24th was the date that we settled on. So there's no hard and fast pressing need to have this approved by February. You can certainly approve it in March.
All right, well, I appreciate that, and some good thoughts by Director Sloan in that regard. Let's proceed with comments. Director Harwick.
I'm guessing that what Director Sloan was referring to was the Vision Zero coalition that that Director Rusha and Director Guzman and myself have been a part of. If just to put it out there, I am very interested in seeing that be a topic of conversation in the future. Specifically, March would be great. So thank you, and that's what I've got.
Appreciate that, Director Harwick. Director Busick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick look at the work plan. Seems to be fairly operations heavy and not too heavy on the safety side of things. And I don't know if you all know this, but we've got a chief of police who's a pretty accomplished guy and really good at what he does. So I would love to have him in here somewhere telling us about what's going on with our police department, the transition from contract security to a bigger police department, what we're doing to address safety concerns, and as GM's EO talked about, the concerns for our operators and all that. So I'd like to see more of Chief Fitzgerald in here. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Busick and Director Harwick, for those inputs. They're certainly worthy of further discussion and meritorious. I think next I have Director Rusha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a couple of comments / questions on the plan before us. So I noted that the PTASP is on here twice, and it's as discussion and action. But in the note, it says update / approval. So I just wanted to clarify that we're having a discussion and presentation first, and then the following month is the vote, if that was the intent of staff. And if so, I actually appreciate that, because the PTASP is pretty considerable document. It is also one of the few things that legally by law we have to approve. And so I just want a clarification on that. And then I had a question, and it's actually about Title VI. So I know that the board has to approve a Title VI policy, and this is my ignorance showing. I don't remember the date at which the board last approved. So I was I wanted to ask our GM CEO if that is something that will come before us again this year, or if that expires in future years.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Proceed.
Yes, thank you very much. And I appreciate the questions, Director Russo. So the first question that you posed relative to the Public Transit Agency Safety Plan, the intent is to orient you all first before requesting action, recognizing that we are working in conjunction with guidance that we'll receive from the Federal Transit Administration, any type of rule change that'll be made pursuant to certain codes of federal regulations, and more specifically as relates to what we may do working in conjunction with our Joint Labor Safety Committee. So with that as the backdrop, we would orient you to what that is and our steps going forward. So yes, presenting that element and then basically bringing it back for this board's consideration. As relates to Title VI, generally our Title VI plan is done on a 4-year basis going forward. If my memory serves me correctly, that was last brought to this body. I believe I was here, so I want to say it was done in 2022. And so as we look at where we stand on a federal fiscal year, more than likely we wouldn't be bringing that back, if I do it off the top of my head, until the latter part of 2025.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I had a couple more
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, General Manager, CEO, for that comprehensive update and feedback. So I do concur with Director Busick that it would be nice to get an update from our RTD-PD and our Chief of Police. And so I would also add that it would probably benefit us, similar to how we got last year, getting some data on, like how many suspensions, what for, kind of like hot spots on the system, just things like that. So if we do in fact get an update from the PD this year, that's like a general update, I think that would be helpful for the board. And possibly even include information like that in a quarterly report, whether it's the board report or just something that is emailed to us. I think that would be helpful since we are also voting on policy and, contracts related to security on our system. And then I also just wanted to make a suggestion, and this might be something I think we'll probably talk about this at the retreat, or I hope so. Is that we also receive, and this might be part of Mr. McLean's safety performance update, but in case it's not, that we also receive maybe like quarterly updates on our on existing caps that we have. I think in the past the board received, whether it was quarterly, twice yearly, there was some consistent updates on caps, the status, what was still outstanding, any challenges. And I think that's something that does fall under this committee. So I'd like to see that in this work plan. But those are the two comments I had relative to safety and security. And then on operations side, or excuse me, the service delivery side, we do not receive performance reports for paratransit. I know in the past we had, or I think we had, it might have been quite a while ago, it might have been years ago. And as we talk about metrics and having a dashboard or just reporting on our performance, I'd also like to see that included. So I just wanted to say that on the record. And those were my comments. And thank you to staff, and also thank you so much to Mr. Kroll for coming up with this and helping us herd the cats. It's much appreciated.
Thank you, Director Rusha. Mr. Vice Chair Bouquet.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think kind of circling back, the idea that I kind of interpreted is we would have our retreat in February, and then this is a living document as that has been pointed out over and over again. But the hope is we have these discussions during our retreat. Another thing I would add on to our discussion, and I'm certain Chair Davidson is listening to all of this and considering what to talk about during the retreat, is going off what Director Busick said is whenever Chief Fitzgerald has come down to all of our local events down here in District G, all of my local representatives have just been impressed by him and his knowledge. And again, just piggybacking off what Director Busick said, getting updates specifically also on how we are partnering with local law enforcement in all of our different districts. I would love to get that I would love to get that from operations and safety. I would love to get updates on that because it is happening and there is progress moving forward, and having that in a public session and knowing we are moving the needle in the right direction, I think is crucial. And I think that being one of our key topics to discuss either during our board retreat and or adding this to our working group is key and crucial, because there is work that is being done and the public needs to know about that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Any other comments or inputs? I would like to thank the committee members wholeheartedly for the good stuff that's come forth already in just a few minutes this evening. Certainly gives Director Bouquet and Michael Ford and Deborah and I and Jack some more good inputs to add to try and get in shipshape in February, whether it's the committee meeting or the retreat or both. Any non-committee members with comments? Mr. Ford, any wrap-up comments?
No, Chair, I do not have any. Thank you.
All right, I appreciate that. Other matters? Anything else for the good of the order from our board of directors? Yes, Director Sloan.
Yes, I would just like to express my appreciation for the real-time signboards that have been installed at the light rail stations. They're really helpful. And also I've noticed on the overhead digital signs, those are now also real time and it changes. And when run is canceled, that goes up on the digital sign, which is incredibly important for riders, particularly in sub-zero temperatures. So thank you. Well, I appreciate it. It's a great improvement.
Thank you, Director Sloan, for that update. Director Rusha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a comment question, and it's about the coping panels project. So last year, obviously there were service disruptions, and that does impact the whole system. And it looked like, based on the data, that we lost some ridership. And I was just wondering if, staff had any, kind of postmortem thoughts about, will we get that ridership back? Was that permanent? Was it temporary? Do we know? Which is also recognizing that project is not complete yet, and we will have further service disruptions on the light rail system. So and this is not a knock on staff or anything that we did. That project was necessary. But I am a little bit concerned that that dip in ridership might become a permanent dip. And I was just wondering if anyone could speak to that, and also to how we're gonna face this challenge this year as we complete the project.
Madam CEO, General Manager, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. So in reference to your question, Director Rusha, thanks for broaching that. Yes, we have leveraged a myriad of lessons learned going forward. And what is commonplace, which we are going to incorporate as we go forward, is having the scheduled time incorporated into our service change. What we were doing previously when we undertook this project, recognizing that there was a myriad of different factors that came into play relative to the delivery of materials that were needed, a greater window that was needed, other unforeseen circumstances where maintenance of rail crews needed to be displaced due to the fact we had other critical issues happening with our infrastructure, and more specifically, we had unprecedented rain in the spring as well. So when we talk about the loss of ridership, it's easy to conjecture and speculate because oftentimes when a ride takes longer than what is needed, and all that's due to the simple fact that the throughput of a train has to be done manually, and we have to ensure the safe passage of that, recognizing the system was designed, whether it be good, bad, or indifferent, in some places with single track, then that is hindering the service reliability. It's very analogous when you're driving an automobile, whereby there's only one lane of traffic, and oncoming traffic has to yield to traffic going in the opposing directions. So with that context being afforded, we are going to do an expansive communications campaign. Probably won't do a lot to mitigate people's angst because people want what they want when they want it, but recognizing that we have to ensure that we're making modifications for the betterment of transit service delivery. We will do that going forward. And as I indicated with my opening comments, that we will factor in the actual time delay in the schedule so people can have a better understanding of what that may be. But I'd be the first to tell you that we can schedule accordingly. But if there's something else, safety will come first. And if we have to halt a train, we will do that going forward. And recognizing that we do have service that will be readily available, chances are we wouldn't use bus bridges or things of the like because we have another mode of transport that's readily available, being light rail. And I think with the effort going forward and trying to manage and also utilizing the components that we have with our transit app, whereby people can plan in a much more efficient fashion by putting in certain words to get to a destination as opposed to knowing the specific station and things of the like. We believe that that could aid and mitigating the angst and trepidation relative to this critical maintenance project. Thank you.
Is that all, Director Rusha?
On that question, yes, I had one more, if I may.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks. And so and this might be too soon. It might be cart before the horse or before the bus. But so looking ahead to service changes, I know as a director who represents a portion of Denver, which is DPS, I had a lot of requests from stakeholders and schools about school tripper service and increasing that. So for just by way of explanation for my colleagues. So in Denver, the school board had passed an initiative for later start times, and local schools do have quite a bit of leeway into when their day starts, which, as you can imagine, since so many kids are dependent on RTD, could create kind of domino chaos. And so I was just wondering, I know we do have an operator shortage and we're very sensitive to that, but I was just wondering if our GMCO would be able to speak, are we able to increase some service for our youth, relative to the to the bell schedule for those high needs areas, for those transit dependent kids?
Go ahead, Ms. Johnson.
Yes, thank you kindly.
If it's not too early to say, and I don't want to put you in a bad position, but I wanted to broach the subject.
No, you're not putting me in a bad position, and I will provide context for those that are listening. So relevant to the points you raised about what we utilize in the transit industry as trippers, what that means is that we will have extra buses to basically support our transit service delivery during certain times of the day. In doing that, we do have to ensure that we have people power. More specifically, as we talk about bell adjustments, we have to clearly ensure that that aligns with our resources. And more specifically, we have to be careful that we are not utilizing our services for school bus transportation, recognizing that the federal government has strict guidelines around how we deliver those services. So with that as the context, Director Rusha, we will do our best in partnering with Denver Public Schools, as we always do, contingent upon the time of day and what services we have readily available. We will try and incorporate that into existing schedules as we go forward, recognizing that our workforce bids on their shifts. We have to ensure that we have ample people readily available, as we could be in an instance where we are relying on extra board being those that we have available to sit around, very analogous to a substitute teacher waiting to get called into a classroom to provide service to those kids in need of the education. So with that, we will be intentional as we go forward, recognizing the importance, and you've heard me say this, public transportation and public education go hand in hand, but we do have an obligation to deliver public transit services to all. So with that as the backdrop, we will ensure that we do the best that we possibly can without cutting off our noses to spite our faces, and ensuring that we are not violating school bus regulations as outlined with the Federal Transit Administration. Thank you.
Dr. Rusha, is that all?
You're on mute.
You're on mute. Okay, we lost audio, so sounds like we are good there. I see no other hands raised. Just a reminder, when we adjourn this meeting, we will take a 5-minute break, and Chair Catlin of the Performance Committee will commence her meeting at 5 minutes after we adjourn. Reminder, our next meeting, February 14th, sweethearts, be there or be square. And please don't forget to get your input to Vice Chair Bouquet or myself or staff members on the work plan. We had a nice little start tonight, so let's continue working together to flush out that plan. So, seeing no other items or discussion, the meeting is adjourned at 6:45 p.m. Mountain. We will commence the Performance Committee meeting at 6:50 p.m. Mountain. Thank you.
Hi all, and just a reminder, you will stay in this Zoom room for that Performance Committee meeting.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.